Hello, hello, everybody out there in LinkedIn universe, YouTube universe. I'm so happy to have another Dancing with Numbers in real life series with the wonderful Madeline Reeves. My name is Trisha Tate, and I'm CEO of FinCore. We are a fractional CFO services company that helps business owners grow profitably, scale confidently, and then exit successfully. The reason why I started this series is to normalize conversations around money and finances. It tends to be, for many business owners, the scariest side of their business. But I firmly believe that it is also the core of every business. And everything stems from there. People can argue that with me, but I believe it's true. Whether you are $50,000 business with 50,000 in revenue, 5 million in revenue, 500 million in revenue, it always boils down to the numbers. So I also wrote a book called Dancing with Numbers: Grow a Financially Healthy Business and Choreograph the Life You Want, because I wanted this information to be accessible to more people than we are able to serve. And I wanted people to have like a CFO, the mind of a CFO in their pocket, right? Within a book. And it's also available on Audible. And there are a lot of metaphors to dance and pop culture and stuff, so that numbers doesn't have to be boring. It could be fun, and you can dance with your numbers. And so I took the book and I'm bringing it live, because in the book I have interviews with business owners, and I found that that was the most interesting and fun and valuable part of the book, is sharing stories of business owners who have shared their journey of managing their finances, have grown million-dollar, multi-million-dollar businesses, and they shared the highs and the lows. So I'm bringing these conversations to you all now live with real business owners like Madeline. And we're going to continue the conversation we started in June. It's been very exciting. And so today, I'm so excited to have Madeline here. She's founder and CEO of Fearless Foundry. She also has a wonderful podcast. I want her to introduce herself so that she can really share with us all the things that she's working on.
Awesome. Thank you, Trisha. I'm so excited to be here. I am a founder. I'm a multi-time founder. I'm a multi-passionate person, and so my primary company is Fearless Foundry. But I do a lot of different things, and as you know, as a CEO, we wear a lot of different hats depending on the day. But Fearless Foundry is a creative consultancy that focuses on supporting mission-driven entrepreneurs as they start, grow, and scale. We do that primarily through branding work, marketing services, and also supporting people on the business development side of things. And I have an amazing team of people that works with me to support those founders. I've had the company since 2017, and so it's been a huge part of my journey over the last 7 years. And then, like you mentioned, I host a podcast. I actually have two podcasts. So one is called Finding Fearless. I'll put the link to that in the chat. And then I also co-host a show called Creative Friction with my co-host Jeff Mead, which is a podcast primarily for creative services business owners, just kind of talking about the nuts and bolts of running that business. Sometimes we talk about money too on there, because it's definitely a focus and a passion for me. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for being here, Madeline. And something I want to encourage the audience to do is, if they have questions, please put it in the chat or the comments, and we'll either answer now or a little bit later. I want to encourage this ongoing conversation, right? So we are having this live today, but it lives in infamy on the worldwide web. So how I met Madeline was in around the pandemic, 2020. And I was creating a conference for women business owners to talk about their financials, and I was setting it up to be in person, but we know what happened in 2020. And so a mentor of mine at the time, Matt Hagum, who said, are you going to still create the intention? And this was before virtual events was a thing. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, we're going to do it virtually. And he was like, I want you to speak to Madeline, because she had been involved in fintech and had a group at the time. I don't know if you still have this membership of women in accounting and finance, right? And discussing our challenges and issues in a group setting. And that's how we first met. And the interesting thing is, we were so aligned on a lot of things. So we were talking about pricing, and you were talking about pricing for prosperity. I was talking about pricing for profitability, but I like how you reframed it and your perspective on it. She's also an advocate for BIPOC business owners, so also something that is near and dear to my heart. And she supports mission driven businesses, which I love, and I'm a mission driven business. So we align on so many things. But the one thing, and I don't know if you remember this, you sent me a shirt. I believe it was you,
Mm-hmm.
and it says, "I write my own paycheck."
I cut my own paychecks. It's the
I
most
cut
popular shirt I've ever made. Yeah.
I cut my own paycheck. I love that shirt. I should have worn the shirt today, actually.
It's popular. Everybody who has it loves it.
I cut my own paycheck. Reason why that like hit home for me is because so many women business owners, when they run their business, especially in the beginning, forget, actually even at seven figures, forget to pay themselves, or
Mm-hmm.
forget to consider themselves in the equation around pricing and
Mm-hmm.
around just like what their profitability should be.
Mm-hmm.
And I would love for you to share your perspective and your thought around how you factor in like your worth, your value, not even your worth, but how you
Mm-hmm.
build your salary into your pricing and into how you think about profitability, and also what drove the wording on that shirt.
Yeah. So before I had the business, I had the podcast. And I joke sometimes that I started the podcast to build the mental fortitude, build the belief system that I too could run a business. I have been very successful in my corporate career. I rose to the ranks of being a global business development leader for an international tech startup by the time I was 27. So I had like been on the rocket ship to the moon, working for startups and things like that. But I lacked the confidence to believe that I could build my own business. And even though I come from three generations of entrepreneurs, when I decided to start my own company, my family's response was like, "What? Why? What are you doing? You've got benefits,
Mine
you've got
too.
you've got all of these things." But I looked at that legacy and was like, but there's something really powerful about the idea that
Mm,
you could provide for yourself, that you could create these things for yourself. And I think there was also a little bit of a legacy of scarcity. Well, can you provide benefits? Can you, put away for retirement? And so those were all factors that were really floating around in my mind when I started my own company. My first goal, my first year in business, particularly from like an annual earnings perspective, was just to replace my salary. And, I did just shy of $150,000 in my first year. My expenses were pretty minimal because it was really just me. And so I was able to get pretty close to replacing my salary. My salary in tech at that time had been about $125,000. And so when I, got to that moment, I had a lot of pride, right? Because 1 year in business, I had accomplished that goal. Well, I was also kind of burning myself into the ground. I was like taking
mm,
on too much work. I was doing it all. I was working weekends. By the end of the year, it was me and an assistant. And thanks to some mentorship from a good friend, it was like, you need to build a team. And what I know to be true now is, as somebody who identifies as a visionary, as somebody who's an Enneagram 3, I will always have bigger ideas and bigger, mission, vision, things like that, then I will be able to execute on my own. And so I need to surround myself with capable executors and integrators who can help me bring that to life. But to your point, Trisha, in that next season of building a team, I lost sight of myself in that equation, And so here I was sending out t-shirts to all my business girlies that said, I cut my own paychecks. And actually my own paychecks started to suffer in that season
wow.
because I'm also Enneagram 3 wing 2, which means I'm acts of service, which means I'm dedicated to taking care of others, which means I put people before myself, which means I'm super people pleaser. And so I started hiring all these young women, and I wanted to take care of them first. I wanted to make sure their paychecks were paid first. And as a result, it meant I was always getting paid last. And
Mm,
over the next couple of years, my pay really struggled as a result of that. And it also set me on a journey to really rewrite some of my personal narratives around what I'm worth so that I could, start actually getting back to earning what I'm supposed to. So to kind of answer the second end of your question, like how do I think about it in terms of my own profitability or how I'm pricing? Really differently these days. Really differently
mm.
these days. I was just like throwing out big numbers wherever I could, hoping that the shit would close, and then after the fact, I was like, do we have enough around here to like pay everybody, and oftentimes the equation was like, yeah, we can pay everybody else, but inevitably, because a lot of what we were doing was big ticket consulting and I was the lead on almost every project, I
Mhm.
was doing a shit ton of work. And sorry, can I swear? uh, I,
We're gonna bleep that one out, but that was
Okay,
honest.
I'll be better. I've told you I'm a bit of a cursor. But I was doing a ton of work and I wasn't actually getting paid for it. And so now what I do is I price my model really differently. I utilize kind of a modified version of profit first in my business to ensure that I'm pricing for profitability. You would have been so proud of me yesterday. I'm in a mode right now where we're revamping some of our services here at Fearless Foundry. And prior to putting that pricing out into the world, we're spreadsheeting out all of the cost of delivery. And so we can understand, this is how much the team is getting paid. This is how much me and the business are getting paid, and making sure we've got enough to put in our operating account, put in my payroll account, put in my 401k, so that I am taking home from the business and providing for myself in the ways that not only I wanted to when I set out to create this company, but quite frankly, I need to. I'm a single mom. I'm an entrepreneur. Like nobody else is going to be putting in my 401k for me. And so I need to take charge of those things. But it was definitely a learning journey to get to here.
So kudos and congratulations to you. A lot of people I know use the profit first model. It reminds me of the old envelope model. From
Yeah.
an accounting perspective, it's a bit of a headache to have like 4, 5, 6 bank accounts to like
Yeah.
reconcile in the background. But the point of it is discipline, right? You're being disciplined about how you allocate your monies. And I love what you shared because at FinCore, our clients are primarily professional services, commercial services, and creative services businesses. We also support retail businesses with about 50 to 100 SKUs, right? But one of the biggest issues with our services professionals is that they're not tracking the full profitability of each project and each deal, and therefore their pricing is off, especially when they don't account for employees. And then you're going a step above that, which is important, that the owner factors in their time. And I'm a finance person, but I had to think about that specifically too, and started even tracking my hours, right? So you're
Mhm.
getting employees to track their hours, or contractors, what have you. But as an owner, when you're leading a project or you're onboarding, like from the time you onboard is time that you are committing to the client, and
Mhm.
that needs to be accounted for in the pricing, even at the proposal phase. So I love that you're spreadsheeting it out and you're factoring, how much you want to make to support your lifestyle. And I'm an advocate for the put you first model. So I want you to think back some years, maybe 21 years, because you are 21. And we are all 21. Yeah, I was going to go somewhere else with that, but I'll leave that alone. Um, when you first you got your first lesson about money. So, what was the lesson in childhood, and who did you learn it from?
Hmm. So I learned it from my mother. And it's funny because I think about this story a lot, but if I was to probably tell it in front of her, she probably wouldn't remember. Because it was just a passing moment, but it really impacted me. And we were at like a Safeway or a grocery store, something like that. And we were in the checkout line, and you're in that spot where they got all the goodies, and you want one. And I wanted a pack of Pokemon cards. I'm dating myself as a 90s baby here. Early 90s. I identify more as an 80s baby. But anyways, there was a pack of Pokemon cards there. And I went, to grab it and ask my mom if I could have it. And my mama was like, who do you think you are? Or like what she really said was like, what do you think I am? Made of money? And that stuck with me. And as a kid, I knew we didn't have a lot, and we definitely didn't have a lot extra. And we grew up well, and probably in any other city or place we would have been considered like very solidly middle class. But I grew up in an island and a community that is the richest zip code in the state. And I remember like being mad at my parents because we didn't go to Paris for Christmas, because all my friends were going to Paris for Christmas, sort of thing. And so, you know, that perspective was really skewed. But by comparison, I felt really poor, you know, because I couldn't even have that pack of Pokemon cards. And there was a moment probably about 4 or 5 years ago, maybe it was a little more recent, but I was basically, you know, in a similar situation, not in the grocery store, but somewhere else. And one of my kids, you know, asked me for something, and the words came out, "What do you think I am? Made of money."
Mm.
And it was a really stark moment for me. And, you know, I feel really fortunate that I work with a lot of like coaches and business advisors. And I brought it up with one of my coaches and we talked about it. And it was like, whoa, this is a pattern. And the truth about money work, you know, especially from what I've seen over this past like 7 to 10 years, you know, going from corporate into entrepreneurship, is that like the work never ends. And so I thought, you know, I had kind of like made it to this next level, and then this thing came out. And so what I unpacked was like, oh, I need to kind of rewire this belief, because at my core, what I believe money to be is a form of energy. It's a way that we've come up with as people to do an exchange, when we're giving energy, when we're giving value, when we're giving time, when we're giving expertise, you know, or, you know, labor, you know, or goods, whatever it is. It's an energetic exchange. And so if I believe money is energy and I'm an energetic being, I actually am made of money. And so, you know, and this is a challenge for me as a parent, because my kids have so much more than I did growing up. I have busted my ass for years. Sorry, I'm swearing again. But I have busted for years to be able to provide them a life that is different than when I first grew up. And they have a lot more, but one of my big triggers is still when they will ask me for even more. You know, my son was like, "Oh, I only got $1,000 bicycle," which, mind you, like our whole family pulled in for this like really nice birthday Christmas gift for him. You know, and I'm like, only $1,000? Like, you ain't got no sense what money is. But what I've found is, as I do the work, as I keep healing myself around money, you know, I can change the mentality. And so, to go back to the, you know, I'm made of money statement, I ended up working with that as a mantra for a number of months. And I even like made a screensaver for the back of my phone that said, "I'm made of money." And I talked to myself about it. And it was during a really big transformational time in my life where I was going back to being a single parent. I was going through a divorce. I had been at kind of one of my lowest years financially. And it kickstarted a big year of financial transformation for me. And so it's a mantra that I still carry and I still play with, because, you know, I think sometimes these memories, they wire us in a certain way, to repel money, or to feel averse, or to feel scared. And I'm working to get like really good with my money and really get to know my money and really be in harmony with it. But it's an ongoing process.
So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
I feel I could feel things through the universe, the virtual universe, right? So I feel like a sensitivity in this moment in your honest and authentic sharing. And I feel like that experience is right there in front of your face right now, at how many ever years later. Um, and I would implore everyone who is watching and listening to this to ask yourself the same question. What was your earliest childhood memory around money? What was the lesson and who taught it to you? And either journal, videotape, whatever, sit in meditation, whatever, about it, because I am sure that the moment is going to come up like a movie in front of you, and it's going to be really, you're going to feel it, you're going to see it, you're going to hear it, right? Because it's a core memory of yours. And I feel like it's the first step around awareness, right? It's the first step in a money journey and a financial journey as a business owner. It's super important to have that awareness and then continue the work around it, which you have so beautifully done. And as you were speaking about what your son is going through, what I thought to myself is, in the same way that your mother created that core memory for you, you're also creating core memories for him. So I see an opportunity for him to learn that
Mhm.
money doesn't grow on trees, right? Like
Mhm.
by earning or by working, doing chores, figure that chores.
Can we
Doing
go here? Because I really want to talk about this.
yeah.
Yeah, okay. So this is the thing, and I've been talking to a lot of friends about it because my oldest is 13, my youngest is almost 7.
Mm-hmm.
And teaching your kids to behave differently about money than the way you were raised is like a big challenge, because if you do not rewrite these paradigms, you're just going to pass them on, one. And two, again, they might exist as triggers for you. So for me, like, I'm that mom who, if I don't watch myself, I'm like, oh, you're going to complain about your $13 a week allowance? Like, you should have seen how much I got back in my day. Like, I will totally turn into that mom. But one of the things that I was taught growing up around money, which I think was really good for the time, but I'll explain where I think the limitations was every time we got money in my household growing up, we had to put half of it in savings and half of it in spending. And so we had these savings accounts, and so we'd put half in spending, and then the rest we could keep in cash. However, if we earn, so that was like if it was gifted to us, birthday money, Christmas, you name it, right? But if it was money we earned, we put a third in savings and we got to keep the other 2/3. Great lesson. But by the time I turned 18, I had $2,500 in a savings account. I turned 18 and I went to Forever 21 and went buck wild. Like, it was the dumbest thing I ever did because I could finally access the money. Okay. Okay. Terrible, terrible life choices.
It wasn't dumb. Forever 21 is cute.
I remember I bought a pair of Coach sunglasses and I was like, I am so fly. Like, I was so into it, right? However, with my kids, I've changed the paradigm a little bit. And there's a couple tools that I really value in this too. So my kids, they have a third, a third, a third rule. They get of their monies, they are putting a third into their spending, a third into their savings, a third into their investments. My son, who's 13, we started his investment accounts when he was maybe about 7 or 8. He now has $3,000 in that investment account, and it's growing, and he's watching it grow, and he's learning about the growth, and we're having conversations about, okay, it's, in a time of recession, what are the companies that you believe in and you want to buy into because you think that their stock price will be doing better? So I'm teaching about investing, which I love, and I have a personal passion for like small time investing. But the other thing is I also make them earn it. There's no giving money in this household. And so, yes, you do chores around here because you live here. But my kids basically get, as old as they are, that's the number of dollars a week. And then, they have a set of chores that they have to do to earn it. And I use a tool called Greenlight, which I think is a really great tool for parents because
Awesome.
it allows you to literally build a chores list, and they can, check off the chores, and then I can say, like, did they really do it? And then once it's done, I can distribute the money automatically to their accounts. And they even have a little investing option for kids. So I love that as a tool to kind of like make that same idea. Like when I was a kid, it was like a chore sheet at our house and my dad handing out cash, right? And so it's like a modern way to do that same concept and to teach kids, that money doesn't grow on trees. And so like the perfect example of it was last week, my 13-year-old wanted to go on his first date. And apparently this boy told this girl he was going to like pay for everything. And I was like, that's interesting because you have $0 in your Greenlight spend account, sir. So like, how are you going to ball out at the movies with this girl?
Right.
And he was like, I don't know. And I was like, there's a list in your Greenlight. I keep like a bonus chores list that's like wash my car this much, weed the garden, like things that they don't do every day. I was like, go do some bonus chores if you want to take your date to the movie. So his bet, like 2 hours
That was great.
was like washing my car and like picking weeds and stuff. But I was like, I'm not shelling out this cash. Like, you didn't do nothing to earn it. I worked really hard this week,
I love that you have implemented this in your household so that the moments where he's like, oh, I only got $1,000 bike, you like, did you put any money in it? Because you could have got it maybe a $1,200 bike if you took something out of your savings, but at least you have the structure in place. And thank you for sharing for those parents out there, business owner parents who don't necessarily have this structure in place and are trying to figure out a way to smartly educate their kids about money without overwhelming them. So again, applause to you for continuing to work through your stuff and also setting up this structure for your kids. I want to make a transition to your business and the growth of your business, because when I met you, it has evolved since
Yeah.
then. So I want you to talk to us about what what inspired a transition in your business. I feel like there was one major transition. I don't know if you have
Mhm.
multiple. And then, did you use any numbers to make that decision? Were there any like
Mhm.
financial insights or something that triggered that decision?
Mhm. Great question. And one of the biggest learning lessons that I've been on in business has to do with the numbers and the team and the model I really wanted to run. So, like many, minority founders, I'm a bit of an accidental entrepreneur,
Mhm.
because many of us, seek entrepreneurship for some active liberation, whether that is, financial freedom, freedom around our calendars, flexibility, all of those things. Um, and so when I started my company again, my mission was to just be able to like pay my own way. But then in year two, I started building out a team and didn't really have a good sense of how to provide for that team or pay for that team. They started as contractors, and I was very proud, to roll that into a employee model. This is probably around 2020, 2021. And if you go back in that point in time, you'll find content, of me talking about, fair pay and pay equity and, making sure you pay your people well. And I was, by comparison to others in my industry, I was paying people really, really well. They had, didn't have health benefits. It was really hard to provision for a team of our size, but they had a health benefit stipend. They had 401k. That was a values-based 401k. And it was sort of working, but it was also a lot of me really having to bust my butt to chase big contracts. There was a lot more paperwork to manage. There was, basically I became like an admin for my business instead of
Right.
like a leader in my business and a consultant, that what I really set out to be. And it got to this point in 2022 where we had like chased all of these really big clients, to keep the cash flow going. And that year we did roughly about $950,000. And it was our biggest year yet. And we were in the red, because of the cost of the team. And so, in that spirit of, me wanting to take care of everybody else, it came at the cost of my paycheck. And
Mhm.
so I, didn't take as much home, not nearly as much as I had even in the first year. And then I started, kind of trying my best to restructure, or my problem or my solution really was like, I just got to make more money. I just got to make more money, right? And
Top
then
line, make more
yeah,
revenue,
top line, just throw more money in the top, and everything else
and
will
it's going to
come.
trickle down. Yeah. Mhm.
Exactly, right? But, like, I was having a conversation with somebody the other day, and, like, it's, like, in some cases, in some business models, it's, like, more money, more problems. I was having to deal with, like, payroll in 7 different states and, like, all of
Right.
these things. Um, and in the start of 2022, we lost $500,000 in booked revenue overnight. And really, the way we work as a a monthly recurring revenue model is that we have clients. They're on typically 6-month or annualized contracts. So we had these 3 major clients who were on annualized contracts, and they were all up for renewal. And they were really supposed to renew in January, but they kept kind of like, hey, we're still kind of in budgeting. We're still kind of in budgeting. And I trusted these clients. All of them had been with us for at least a year, some of them 2 or more.
Right.
And in March, every single one of them was like, actually, we don't have the budget. And these were big contracts, like $100,000, $250,000 contracts. So we lost $500,000 in total predicted revenue overnight, or over the course of 30 days. And I had at the time 12 full-time employees who I had built up, this huge mega business to support them. And I had payroll to make. And so I was lucky enough, I like hustled really hard and in 30 days closed a CDFI for 100 grand at 5% to help to cover the gap for payroll for a couple months. And in hopes, I was like, I gotta, drum up like $30,000 a month in MRR, to cover these gaps that I now have. And ultimately the inevitable happened, which was that these clients were fintech clients. 2022, if you ask anybody who worked in tech, was like we were the layoff before the layoff, because all these companies are now doing massive layoffs. But the first thing they did to shore up cash was to cut any external vendor contracts they could. So anybody who worked with them as a vendor knows that this was like a huge pitfall of a year. And the revenue didn't come back. It didn't come back for a really long time. And so I had to lay off half my team, and I had to go through a pretty dark night of the soul, which was like, cool, I had taken on at that point in total, it ended up with my EIDL loan being about $175,000 worth of debt, to pay for people who weren't even there anymore. And I still had the debt, and I had a business that was like, barely making payroll every month. And I had an amount of stress, and honestly, like, the quality of my mental health was so poor. I've talked about this openly on my podcast. Like, I was really suicidal at the end of that year. I was really struggling. And I remember like thinking like, oh, if something just were to happen to me, at least then my life insurance could pay for the debt the business has, like, and then everybody would
Wow.
be okay. And so it was like, it was a really dark, really low point, because I had also been brought up to believe like all debt is bad debt, like debt is evil. And the debt burden compared to the revenue we were making felt absolutely insurmountable. But what happened on the other side of that was a streamlining of my business, a distillation of what we were doing. We actually started working more with people I wanted to work with, not the clients that I just felt like I had to work with because of my background in tech. We started to work with more like smaller clients, mission-driven entrepreneurs. As our team turned over, different people became a part of our team, people who were a lot more senior in their experience. And we were just kind of hiring them based off the projects we had, as opposed to like predicted future revenues. And so all of that started to kind of lead to this reevaluation that made for me to think about like, what is the business I actually want to run, and who are the people I really want to serve, and what is the work I want to do. If all of this was to fail, and it was just me, again, trying to pay my own paycheck, what would I do? And I in that process, I uncovered an idea for building what we now call the Collective. And the Collective is a group of all entrepreneurs. So everyone on my team is an entrepreneur and an LLC owner in their own right. And the majority of them make between 70 and 90% of their revenue from my business. But they also have the capacity and flexibility to take on other projects on the side, or most of them like to work, not full time, but again, make more than they would make if they were working part-time in a corporate opportunity. And so my team is a lot more senior now. We're basically all like senior business strategists and consultants, which means the quality of our work is a lot higher. I'm not out here like, chasing a bunch of big projects just for the sake of making payroll. We're really conscious of working with the clients that we love. And as a result of changing the model to the Collective, as opposed to the model we had before, we've actually become a lot more profitable in the process. And for the first time since my first year in business, I was able to actually bring my paycheck back to where it should have been.
Wow. I'm homed in. Okay, so there was a lot, and I'm
Yeah.
gonna unpack a few things.
Yeah.
Um, Again, I applaud you for
Thank
your
you.
bravery as an entrepreneur, because someone said before, entrepreneurship is the biggest lesson in biggest professional development lesson, as well as parenting. I
Yeah.
agree with the first comment. I'm not a parent yet, so I don't know about the parenting.
Yeah.
But it is true. It challenges so much of who we are and what our comfort levels are, and it redefines what comfortable is.
Mm,
But what I love about entrepreneurs that um, that I didn't get as a Wall Streeter with
mm,
a corporate job is we have the ability to figure shit out.
mhm,
Sorry, bleep
mhm,
me. Um, we have a figure outedness. It's not a real word, but we know how to solve problems. And even when it comes to our own emotional self. So I applaud you for taking that on and now settling into a business model that works for you. And
Mhm.
what I want to share with those in the audience who are considering different business models, know that it is possible. You just have to figure out what works for you. Be very clear, though, on when someone is a 1099 versus a W 2 employee. Get an employment lawyer involved. I have a number of those that are friends,
Mhm.
that can help make sure that you are doing things legally appropriate, because you never want like the Department of Labor to come in on the back end
Mhm.
like that. And sales tax issues, payroll tax
Yeah.
and sales tax issues are the biggest issues. um, but I'm happy that you found a model that works for you, and it's back into your values around equity and
Mhm.
supporting women business owners and all of those things. I want to also um, define some terms
Mhm.
that you shared. So CDFIs, right? Community Development Financial Institutions. They are non-traditional lenders. Some of them have lines of credit, but especially during the pandemic, they were considered the first responders of capital, because they really support low-income communities and BIPOC business owners, so women and people of color business owners, in a strong way. And
Mhm.
sometimes they have better rates, but their paperwork is a little more a little more complex and heavy than a traditional bank or regional bank. So I believe there are about 1,500 CDFIs in the United States.
Mhm.
So if people are looking for access to capital, that is an avenue. And then you mentioned MRR.
Mhm.
So MRR is a term that typically tech companies,
I'm a
um, right.
techie.
It's a term, because when you said it, I mean, I understood what you meant,
Yeah,
but it's not usually a way that people think about their revenue. So especially when you're a professional, a services based company, you want those clients that are going to give you a continuous retainer, right?
Mhm.
So that your revenue is predictable every month. And from a tech perspective, this is the thing about finance. Like, we complicate things. We throw words on things. Let's just call it a retainer every month.
Mhm.
No, we have to throw the word MRR to make it
Mhm.
sound sexy in our but MRR stands for monthly recurring revenue, right? So I wanted to define those two terms.
Okay.
And then the last thing that I wanted to sort of break down in this
Mhm.
is um, the emotional side, right?
Mhm.
So I'm so happy you are here with us,
Thank you.
but you had some real thoughts, some real deep thoughts, which I'm not going to unpack here because I'm not a psychologist or a
Mhm.
therapist, though there is something called financial therapy, and there is a financial therapy association, and I happen to know who the president is. If that is something that you want, or anyone else who is watching this wants, like, drop it in the comments. I want a connection of financial therapy, financial therapists. Um, the real emotion around debt, because I hear it from so many women business owners, like, I don't want to owe anybody, debt is bad. I literally know someone who I interviewed in the book, whose mother cut up credit cards and taped it to like the fridge or somewhere central that the family could see, and like that's a core memory for her. And I am so curious to interview like 100 women and find out if this is a pervasive thought for women around debt is bad, because debt can also help you grow and scale your company,
Mhm.
and you right, and you needed that in the moment, and you had so much emotion around it because of what you thought about debt, but actually it supported you in your business, it supported your employees, it supported you in a moment where you needed to rethink your
Mhm.
business model to grow forward. But because you had so much emotional past baggage tied to debt, it made you spiral emotionally, as opposed to flipping that mindset as this is a vehicle for support. And I say that because I literally just started to pay down my EIDL loan, and I was
Mhm.
like, "Oh, like, I've been saving to pay it down, so I am generating interest
Mhm.
on the money that I'm saving to pay it down." So I see debt as a tool,
Mhm.
and so many other people see debt as like a deterrent or something bad.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I have you experienced that like in your
Yeah.
podcast and in speaking with other women business owners?
Yeah, so I want to talk about what saved me in this moment, and then I'll talk about like what I learned along the way about women owners versus others. Um, so what saved me was I am really fortunate enough that because of my past life in fintech and the accounting industry, many of my dearest friends are women who work in finance and are accountants actually. And so in that moment, I let two of my best friends know how much I was struggling and that I was like a little bit worried about my well-being. And, you know, obviously their first advice was like, please reach out to your therapist. But their second piece of input was like, girl, that's nothing compared to some of the businesses that we see. Like we are inside the books and the financials of so many different companies, and many of them have much, much more than that and have lower valuations than your company does. And, you know, helping me reframe it, helping me see it as a tool, helping to see like, okay, even if you had to go to a liquidity event, like here's how you could navigate that. And so suddenly I was like able to be like, okay, I can handle this, I can manage this, I can learn how to work with this. um and you know, ultimately, do I still have regrets about it? A little bit. Like I think the part that I don't love is like the fact that I pay out, you know, between 2 and 3 grand a month on that CDFI, and none of those people who I got that cash for worked here. I think I might feel differently if I put some of it in my own pocket, to be honest, but it paid for everybody else. So that part stings a little, particularly because it's like that's, you know, 2 to 3 grand of cash flow I could be using to pay myself or paying somebody else on my team. However, you know, it was the best debt I could have gotten at that point. Besides, you know, the IDL, it had, you know, a 5% carry on it and a fixed term. And so, to your point, you know, CDFIs are powerful tools. It did take a little extra legwork, but you
Mm,
know, if you're going to go down the path of getting debt, get the best debt you can, you know, be
right.
persistent on the value of the business you've built and your worthiness of that money, because there are a lot of lenders out there who are hyper predatory. And so know what you're doing when you get into the debt is the big lesson that I learned. But on the
Mm,
side about female owners, for sure, I see a difference. I worked for many years almost exclusively with female founders, and now I work with a mix of people of all genders, but primarily minority owners. And the biggest problem I see for minority founders is the ability to scale. And the wild thing is when you
yes.
ask somebody like the money that they had to start a business, like the differentiator is usually somewhere between like 20 and $50,000. Like the people who get to my level and the people who struggle to ever get there, that's the difference. For me, it was like I had $20,000 in the bank when I started my business. That gave me 3 months of runway to be like, fuck around and figure it out. Like I gotta make some money. And I gotta, you know, I knew that my take home pay at the time was 10 grand a month. And so that was my goal, get to a point where I can take home 10 grand a month. And but there's a lot of people who don't have that initial seed capital, is what I would call that in my instance. And then there's this moment where you're like, I need to be able to have more than me, whether that's I need to invest in some tech to automate some things. I need to hire some people to help. I need to buy a piece of equipment that makes this process easier and less manual, whatever that thing is. And that costs money. And that typically costs money that you weren't factoring for and saving for from a pricing perspective. And so
Mhm,
as a result, that is the moment where it could make sense for you to get some sort of outside capital so that you can scale. But the thing that I tell entrepreneurs is you have to have a vision for what's happening on the other side of that money. Because the solution isn't what I thought, which was like, just throw $100,000 and we'll be fine. We'll figure it out, right? I didn't have a clear plan as to how I was going to fix for that revenue shortfall. I was just like, I'm going to just try and sell my face off. But there were literally market forces that were making me have to change my business model. But if you are somebody who's like, I want to increase my manufacturing so that I can now take on, you know, a purchase order from this big vendor, great, get that capital and make that more money, right? Or I am going to hire 3 people who are each going to bring in this much revenue that not only pays for them, but also pays for this next chapter in our business. Like those are smart moments where you can seek capital. But again, if you don't have a plan for what you're going to do with it and how it's going to make ROI, return on your investment, you shouldn't be taking on that excess interest. You should figure out if there's a way you can cash flow it.
Thank you so much for sharing that. So I've been putting comments
Mhm.
here. Some of the and actually after this conversation, I'll probably put out a post or a newsletter because there's so many jewels and pieces of information that come out of these conversations that honestly I never know where they're going to go. Like I have this set list of 5 questions, and
Yeah.
then we dive deep into a thing, and I think it's wonderful for you to share, and it's just flowing. So as we round out the end of this conversation, I always said it for 30 minutes, but it's always so juicy, and we get into 45 minutes. But we are nearing the end, Madeline. It's been wonderful to have you on. I do have to ask, when you think about your journey with your numbers and financials, right? How would you describe the dance in the
Mm.
beginning and your current dance with numbers?
Mm. So, a thing that most people don't know about me is that I was a single mom by the time I was 21. And when I think about my early career, my dance was one of just not having enough. And I was on state benefits, I was on food stamps. I remember starting the dance by sitting down with a spreadsheet and realizing that I was not making enough to pay for childcare and for food for myself. And so there were many months where I did not eat lunch every day so that my son could go to childcare, so that I could figure out how I could earn more. And so that dance was at first one of avoidance. It was like I didn't want to acknowledge how tight things were. But the dance really began when I started to get to know my numbers and to figure out, okay, what would a life look like where I would have enough to not just get by, but be able to pay my bills, be able to provide for myself and provide for my son. When I look at the dance I'm doing today, it's actually not that much different. It's not that much different. Like one of the things I've really learned is that in order for me to heal around money, I have to be in touch with my money. So I have a dance I do every Thursday. It's called My Money Date. And I sit down with my money and I look at my accounts, I look at my investments, I look at some of the numbers inside of my business. I move money around where it needs to go. I pay my bills. I track how I'm doing against my budget. And what I have found is that the more I am close with my money, the more I learn about my money, the more I'm in relationship with my money, the better I do with my money. And so it really started as a dance of kind of like avoidance and fear and scarcity. Like, I don't have enough. But actually, it was that not having enough that forced me to sit down and get really serious about the numbers. And that's what's led to so much of what I have today.
So as you're speaking, I am visually creating a story of what that would look like on a dance floor.
Mm.
So it sounds like your initial dance was one where you didn't have the right tools. You didn't have the shoes. You didn't have the right attire. You didn't have the right music to be able to get out there and dance, right? But now it sounds like a partnership. You ever watch professional like salsa competitors?
Mhm.
And the sync between the
Mhm.
man and the woman is amazing. Like
Mhm.
he'll throw her out there and she'll know what to do to come back or just to, right? There's a level of trust that has to happen. And to get there, I can't imagine how many times they fell. There was an argument. They were like figuring each other out.
Mhm.
There was a lot of conversation. Actually, I see that when you go to when you watch Dancing with the Stars, they show the
Yeah.
behind the scenes of like how they got to the journey. And it sounds like your dates are like you're in relationship, but you're still getting to know each other before you get
Mhm.
to that full trusting partnership. Would that be fair to say, or am I just
And
putting?
no, I love that. And in another lifetime, I was a dancer myself, primarily modern and ballet. But when I was younger, I did ballroom as well, and so I know that salsa
Oh.
dance pretty well. And it's a dynamic. It's a back and forth. It's a power and energy exchange. And I think that all of the dates also prepare me to make bigger moves. Like one I'm working on right now is like I'm planning to buy an investment property in the next year, or like recently I bought, if you follow me on LinkedIn, I'm like all about my travel trailer right now. And like those were big money moves, and also not only could I make them, but I had information going into them, and I negotiated to get like the best rate on the trailer, and to put, because I was putting money down and I had planned for it. And so it's like every time I'm doing that rehearsal is getting me ready for those bigger primetime moments.
That's awesome. Thank you very much, Madeline, founder and CEO of Fearless Foundry. Excuse me. She has a couple of other podcasts, and she's going to share the links in the comments so that you all can listen in and tune in. I appreciate all of you for staying on with us 50 minutes. Again, my name is Trisha Tate. I am CEO of FinCore, and author of Dancing with Numbers, Grow a Financially Healthy Business and Choreograph the Life That You Want. And hopefully you have gotten a lot of jewels and information, or you've even figured something out after listening to this conversation. I would love, if that is the case, that you would either drop it in the comments or DM me and let me know what you have gotten out of this conversation or other LinkedIn lives that I do, because I really want to understand the feedback and the impact that this is having, so that we can continue to take it on the road and invite other business owners to share their story and their journey. Madeline, how can people reach out to you? Is there a website, Instagram?
Lots of different ways. Because of the nature of my work, I'm all over the internet. So
Okay.
I'll definitely share my podcast in the comments when we wrap up. Also, please feel free to check out our website. We're just fearlessfoundry.com. You can also find me on social media. I'm a little bit sassy. It's Maddy Reeves. So it's Maddie Reeves. And then on LinkedIn, just under my name.
Yeah. So thank you very much again, Madeline. She's a fellow luminary. We're part of a co-working collective called Luminary. Have a wonderful day,
Thank
and
you.
thank you all for being here. The next one is later October. October. Why do I not have the date on the top of my head? My admin is